Welcome to OFFERGOBLIN Coffee Chat Podcast, the investment banking recruitment podcast. I'm Mike Neal. This is Ryan Tan. We're here to talk about coaching, investment banking coaching, how to hire a coach, what to look for in a coach, what to avoid in coaches, how to know when your coach is lying to you, which hopefully will never happen. But first, we're going to start off how we always do with Ryan Tan giving the state of the recruitment market. Ryan, what have you been up to? What is going on with people in banking right now?
Well, I'll say in banking right now, everyone's just pretty much at the desk, right? Everyone's done with training. We're getting into a different gear where the full timers are getting ready to hit training before they start full time. So that's going to be happening in the next month, staggered across the various banks. So to all the analysts who've just finished their first week or who are starting their first week after a week of training, good luck. And if you want to ask me what are going to be return offer rates this summer, I honestly don't know. Um, there's just so much fluctuation, so much up in the air with the whole AI thing right now. So we'll see how folks do this summer. So do your best, good luck, work hard, attention to detail, and yeah, looking forward to hearing success stories for folks on the desk.
Yeah, I feel like it's like kind of the lull period now where like the last it seems like the very end almost of the last cycle where like now the people that we helped get offers last year are like they're through training and they're into their like first week, right? And there's not a lot anyone else can do to help them at this point. Like you're kind of off in the deep end. You kind of have to just play the game. So good luck to you all. And for you all who are just starting, who are getting started in the investment banking recruitment process, this is mostly going to be oriented to you. Um, before we kind of dive into the topic, we'll give kind of our weekly what's happening. People call it a high-low buffalo. I don't know if that's a Zoomer term our producer Jackson came up with. Um, for me, uh, as you know, Ryan, I bet my entire life savings on SpaceX on Friday after their IPO, one of the largest IPOs in history, and one of
It is the largest IP.
the largest IPO in history,
Yeah.
and today being one of the largest wealth growth of a single company ever. So excited to be a part of that. I have no sense of risk. That's why I started my own business. I'm pretty willing to the type of person to, yes, dude, roll the die entirely. And yeah, so far that's gone fairly well. So, if you need any stock investing advice, I mean, you know, I can't say that I'm good at it, but it worked for me. So we'll see. By next week, I'll be like, I can't believe it's all gone. But how could
Past performance is not indicative of future returns. There's a
how could the
disclosure.
rocket guy not be the top? I mean, how could that? It just seems too perfect. It seems too perfect to me. It seems too obvious to me. Maybe that's the problem, but it just seems too obvious that a company that is basically going to own all of space wouldn't be like the most valuable company in human history. Like, it seems very feasible to me. Also, getting some exposure to XAI, of course, and also getting exposure to Twitter and other things. So, anyway, Ryan. Oh, and besides that, lifting a bunch of weights. So that's I think as this podcast progresses, you're gonna see me just kind of fill in a little bit, you know, eating a lot of protein, all that. So let's see, Ryan, what is going on with you, my man? Also,
Not
Ryan,
much. I'm just still
don't
training
you have a
folks.
light? I thought we got a whole
The light
lighting.
is on. The
It
light is
is?
on. It is completely on. You can't tell. Like you could see
No,
the light reflect in my eyes. If you look at
it
my
looks like
eyeballs.
it looks like it
Oh
looks
god.
kind of like a screen light or something, but that's all right. We'll we'll send Jackson over there to tidy it up, I think, some point.
Hmm. I mean, same old, just training folks. Some folks are trying to lateral, yeah. Other folks are trying to. Actually, one thing that's I've noticed more and more is like there's a lot more folks hiring coaches to try to succeed during their internships. Um, Whether it is, keeping them up to speed on the technicals, right? Helping guiding them through just knowing what the hell is going on the desk, right? It's like kind of like having the coach to ask all your dumb questions because you're too afraid to ask your analyst or your associate or your staffer. So I have folks, right,
Mhm.
helping out with that. And so I guess another thing is just things are getting more and more competitive nowadays.
Yeah.
So I
No,
guess,
yeah, I
hey,
mean,
maybe this is going to be a really hot take. One of my students mentioned that they went through another firm's training program and they said that I teach much better. So then I was joking with them is like, you should give
oof,
feedback telling them
Ryan
that they should
Tan.
hire the firm that I work at in order to train their bank. I will not name names or firms, but apparently it's nice to know that my students we're like, yeah.
Well,
So
I know that firms love it when new hires and interns give them business advice. That's kind of their top favorite thing to happen. So that I'm sure that I'm sure they'll have the political capital to steer
well, I will
that.
say this in terms of that uh the feedback is taken very seriously.
Mm.
So
Oh, they
in
do
terms
gather
of
feedback from their
yeah.
people.
So I
Okay.
look at my feedback when I finish training wells. I look at every single comment that's I look at uh generally I've had some pretty good results in terms of for the vast majority, I was looking at my reviews. I think when I was in Disney World, trained 142 kids. Um,
Wow.
and then 139 out of 142 gave me 5 stars, and 3 gave me 4 stars. So, um,
Any funny comments from the Wells Fargo Disney World training?
well, it was really weird being called the goat. So that was nobody calls me. That's really weird.
The goat.
Someone in the comments was like, "Ryan is the GOAT." I'm like, uh,
That's what you need. That's
okay,
what you
but
need to
thank you.
hear.
I don't know if I consider myself the GOAT, but
Yeah.
I
I
will
think
take
it's a
it.
good
I will
segue
take it.
because in some respects, so firms hire essentially uh, from the same pool, uh they essentially are hiring coaches, right, to teach their people how to do certain things, mostly the sort of technical things, modeling, PowerPoint, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And a lot of those same people, like Ryan, are involved as a coach that also helps people to get hired in the first place.
Yeah.
So it is kind of this ecosystem where these like former bankers kind of get into this thing. I think most of the coaches, I think probably all of the coaches that are like top coaches in the space are former bankers or have like worked in finance in some capacity. I think it's
Yeah.
quite hard. But let's talk about like, the topic today is on coaching and investment banking coaching.
Uh-huh.
I think we'd hope to define sort of how that market works and what the pricing looks like. I mean, it's 2026, so granted, pricing can change.
Yeah.
Pricing, the different archetypes of coaches, let's say coaching services, what to look for, and kind of whether you should hire a coach, how you should engage a coach, that sort of thing. So, let's jump off from there. So, first of all, what is an investment banking coach? What do they actually do for you? How would you define that, Ryan?
I mean, an investment banking coach, you can have a whole variety, right? You can have a coach who just jumps in and helps you when you have your interview tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, so they're like just in time. And those are the ones can maybe like even be maybe you're very specific, right? Like I need some technical help. I don't understand how to do my accounting, right? Or maybe you just need some behavioral ad hoc, right? Then you have more dedicated coaches with packages where this is where you're starting to see more and more often. It's kind of like almost like a college consultant, right? Or an MBA admissions consultant where they work with you through the whole sort of recruiting season, right? To help you get the offer. Then if you want to take a step back even further, then you have folks who sort of help you out from the really, really start, from like right when you enter freshman year, and they start planning everything from your internships. This is like almost like the undergrad college admissions coach where
Hmm.
they start you in like middle school and say like, oh, which extracurricular activities you need, what leadership, and then get you up to speed. So I probably put it in like maybe those three buckets, and then there's the like ongoing coaching for those who are on the job who are like, "Hey, I need somebody who's been there, done that, can answer any question I have, who's also well connected in the field, um, but is not going to rip my head off or fire me if I ask them a dumb question, right?"
Right.
So you have a wide range of coaches, and each one serves a
Yeah.
different purpose. And I will say, each of them are useful in their own ways.
Yeah. I think on the coaching side, a coach can really do anything for you. I know that Leland just changed their term from coach to expert, I think, which I think is actually kind of
Mhm,
a better framing because some of the
mhm,
times as a coach, you kind of get questions which are more like a- sort of asking for your expertise and not necessarily for your like training them ability, if that makes sense.
mhm.
So I think what Ryan is describing is sort of like, okay, you have these sort of like point use sort of things where it's like, okay, I have this specific thing I need a coach for. I'm going to hire a coach. They're going to get it done. And then you have this sort of more like strategic advisory kind of side where it's like you have this longer term relationship with them. They kind of guide you through the process. They kind of build up your profile and all sorts of those things, right? And then there's all sorts of things in between that. So pretty much to say that you can pretty much hire a coach for any aspect of this, any piece of this that you're not confident in. And it's also really feasible to just go and talk to coaches for free a lot of times. A lot of them will give you like a 15-minute call and you can kind of talk about like whatever that sort of things that are on your mind are.
Mhm.
That's a somewhat limited game because like it's not like their time is free, but they will talk to you. So
Yeah,
um, I think another thing to kind of talk about on this topic is like who are the different types of people that are doing coaching. So some of the people are like they're MBAs and they're kind of going through school or even undergrads and they're going through school. And so they're kind of doing this as like a side hustle or like a part-time thing. And then you have
yeah,
coaches like Ryan, who's like a full-time all-in coach that has been doing it for some years and is dedicated to it. And sort of the level of like quality or focus that you'll get from those two are a bit different. A lot of times that'll be reflected in the price, which we'll talk a little bit more about price later on.
yeah.
But I would say that those are sort of uh that's sort of I would say like the lay of the land or what you're looking at. So let's talk then about like let's talk a little bit about like the different platforms that you find coaches on. So obviously, I think the two of us we met on Leland, so we're obviously
Yeah.
tied in. Both of us have our sort of like profiles there, at least for the time being. Um, but what are the other kind of ways that people get in touch with a coach or find a coach, Ryan? I think because you've done some other types of work in that regard.
Well, I think, oh, frankly speaking, I got into this mainly through when I was just teaching at Berkeley. So I started the whole idea of mentorship and coaching probably started when in college, just with lower classmen. And then when I went into banking, of course, people reached out. And then there was just a lot of mentoring, whether folks from my church or whether it was like I was training the summer analysts or the full time analysts, I was the staffer. Um, and so there's this coaching thing, kind of like the idea of teaching and mentoring was always with me. And then it wasn't until like I got into when I was in business school and I was teaching finance, and then a lot of my students would come to me in office hours, and they wouldn't be asking for materials, they'd be asking more for career guidance. And then
Hmm.
it just kinda started that way, and I kinda just did it for free
Yeah.
because, I was just I enjoy helping people, and it's always nice to see your students grow. And I never really thought of it as getting paid for it. It was more until the economy took a big turn, and where right now getting jobs is really, really difficult, where you have folks where my students who got jobs, right? The friends of their parents would be like, "Oh, little Johnny here is struggling to get a job. How did, Sarah over there get her offer?" And then Sarah's mom would go, "Well, her teacher helped her get a job." And then they'd be like, "Well, can her teacher help little Johnny get a job?" And so that's kind
Yeah.
of sort of I got in. And of course, like, people start asking, and then like, I mean, I couldn't do it for free for everybody. So then I sort of, I guess, got into this business. But originally, when I was doing this coaching, I used it more of like a way to sort of like even the playing field for folks that, especially when in banking, is it's a very clicky at the undergrad level, and kids can be super mean. For example, those finance clubs are sometimes run by kids who think frats, right? And so the folks that I was helping out as a teacher in MBA were those that you could call it the misfits and the rejects, right? And and this was something I did my MBA at Berkeley. I also did my undergrad at Berkeley, so I know that area, school very well. Is that the kids who go into banking from the undergrad, they're from usually the business school, and Haas Business School is both undergrad and MBA. The MBA is very different from the undergrad business school. But at the undergrad, the kids are kind of seen as gigantic jerks, so much so that the undergrad business majors are known as Haas holes. And so this
I
is
love
like,
that. I'm using that.
well, the MBA is very different. The MBA is like complete opposite. And so this is why I specifically only taught in the econ department. I did not teach in the business school because I also had to deal with those kids when I was in undergrad. I was a stats econ major, and I was able to break into banking, but like I really didn't like the business school kids uh at the undergrad level because they were the people who had got in were very mean, the seniors, right? They would think they're the greatest thing since sliced bread if they had a Goldman TMT offer. And you saw all sorts of nonsense where you'll see seniors who got in Goldman offer, you know, be kind of bully the freshmen and make them do things
Mm.
that that weren't right. For example, we had one. I remember when I was an undergrad, there was a one guy, like he had gotten a Goldman offer, and then he basically created his own club. And he's like, "I'll coach you, but you have to do all the things I tell you." And they made them do like dumb, like adventure, I don't know, quests, maybe that's the word. And then he would also prey on the freshman women, which is very creepy. It was like
Mm.
you had to like it was so I'm just like so it was one of the reasons why I was also like started coaching and just mentoring. I'm like nobody
Mm.
should have to go through that in order to try to land a job. It's like, and plus when you're
Yeah.
18, 19 or 20, you don't know anything better. Right, and so here comes, like, a 22-year-old who's like I mean, kids can be very mean, so I digress. Anyhow, that's how I ended up coaching, right? I did it for free in business school for undergrad, and then, you know, friends of students' parents came asking, and obviously I can't do it for everyone, and so I landed do coaching and teaching and training and all that stuff. So that's my
So,
story.
so would you say investment banking coaches level the playing field?
It's mixed, right? You can also argue that make the playing field wider as well, right? In terms of it depends, right? The thing with coaches is there's a huge wide range of coaches, right? And then it also depends on what type of coach you are. So I'm quite selective on who I take on students, right? I generally try to avoid like the nepo babies, for lack of a better word. Um, and I will also be very selective on who I help with my network. So if there's a kid, for example, that's from a really humble background, works very hard, puts in the effort, but just doesn't have the contacts or connections, I will go out of my way to pull strings. And this is like they're not
Mm,
paying me for it. Like, so there's this one person, this one kid. She was a first generation college student. Her parents didn't go to college. She was a minority, and but she worked really hard. She had like a perfect 4.0 GPA. She went to a non-target school. She would also work on the weekends to support herself. And she was very put together in terms of communication, all that, right? But like
mm,
she obviously didn't have the contacts and she was having interviews at a specific elite boutique. So what I did was, I not only well, I gave her extra time, but that was not the main thing. I also connected her with like my contacts at the elite boutique.
mm.
And I'd be like, can you talk to her? And can you also sort of give the inside details of what's going on so that when she interviews, right? Because she didn't have a chance to sort of like have a network there. And if you're
Yeah.
interviewing at an elite boutique, or any firm in general, it's good to say, look, I spoke with X and so and so. Right.
Hmm.
So we push her and she got the offer and then she was literally
Great.
crying, like crying as if because it was to her, this was a generational social mobility, right? In
Yeah.
terms of so those are the ones that are really worthwhile, but then there'll be
Mm,
ones where man, the kid just doesn't want to do it,
yeah.
and then they have like the family's loaded, and you're just like, I'm only kind of helping you out because your parents asked, right? And this is like a favor from like a family friend or whatever. But those are the
Yeah.
ones where you're just like, man, I probably have better things to do with my time.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll give my journey into this sort of coaching world. I didn't set out to do this. I think I have a natural proclivity to help people, to mentor people, to lead people. I would say probably one of my cardinal abilities is to speak well and to explain ideas well, being organized in that sense. And so when I started Offer Goblin, we just launched it and I needed to make some cash on the side. So people told me that I could be an investment banking coach. I was going to be the tech lead at U Chicago. So I kind of knew, like, I had kind of thought about it before. And yeah, I threw things up onto Leland, right? I think actually the first person that I coached, it was like 100, it was 10 hours for $50 an hour, which is a pretty bad rate for a banking coach. But I basically just taught them technicals and I gave them kind of a ground, like a basis of technicals. Um, and that was fine. I kind of just worked them through the book, but then it wasn't really until I listed myself on Leland and then this guy who was lateraling found me and we did
Yeah.
a ton of hours together and I put in a lot of work to get him into an elite boutique. He was lateraling from a consulting firm. And that was when I was like, oh, the value that I can provide is like pretty substantial. And we've talked about this on prior episodes, how there's like this really clear incentive for people to spend a lot of money in the banking recruitment process because the upside is so huge. I think coaching, even at a pretty high rate, is extremely high leverage because it can really change the outcome
Yeah.
more so than probably most other things that you can do. That doesn't mean that you don't self study. You need to self study. There's a lot of work that you have to do. But a good coach can point you in the right direction and spot weaknesses better than anyone else is going to be able to. So when I started coaching, I was like, oh, this is kind of a scam. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to just come in here and try to figure it out. And pretty quickly, I was like, oh, actually, like, I'm pretty good at this and I can do a really great job. So as that kind of advanced along and I started to like take on more and more clients, it was like I have less and less time and I raised my price. And I think my price is probably now among the higher end on Leland. And I even almost think I could take it even higher. Um, I agree though. I have the same sort of conflict where it's like, well, some of the
Yeah.
people I work with, it's like you know, there's a more meritocratic person out there who maybe deserves that spot better, but they didn't hire me and you hired me and I have to kind of like, ultimately like we operate in like a free market. And so there's only so much that I can um refuse or so much
Yeah.
that I can like not do. But I guess I feel more like a soldier of fortune and how and sort of that the market will naturally find the right things and the right
Of
people.
course, the Chicago School of Economics. You and
uh
your Milton Friedman.
that's right. Yes. I mean, I guess okay, so I guess the way that I look at this is like if there's someone who like let's say they're like a very good candidate. Let's say they're a great candidate. As a person, right? And then there's like sort of another like actually let's say this. Okay, there's one person who like that they have the potential to be a great banker, right? And there's
Yeah.
another person who like doesn't as much. And that person who doesn't as much hires you to be their banking coach. You'll do your best to kind of get them into position, but eventually when they get the job and when they go into the office, like there really isn't hiding in economics. Like eventually it'll be realized like, oh, this person isn't the best fit for this. Um, I think that the other person who like, let's say like had a better potential, but like didn't hire a coach, it's like, it's kind of like tough luck to them.
Yeah.
But the thing is, um, I think there's a lot of credit available in the market, especially with like, if you're a student, like you can take on student loans. And so like with that, you can get enough credits to pay for a banking coach. And yes, is that high risk? Is that high leverage? Yes. But if it works, if that gets you into banking, it kind of pays off. So am I telling you to go spend your student loans on hiring an investment banking coach? I don't know, but find the money somehow if you really are serious about it and want to go talk to coaches. Like it's worth taking a little risk on.
So I will say this, it also depends. I kind of do things a bit different. So I won't take on every student that comes and reaches out to me. So, but I
Mm.
mean, I'll be nice about it, right? I won't say like, go fly a kite, right? I'll probably
Is that
say,
the
look,
meanest thing you could say to someone, Ryan?
well, you should see when I was in banking, I've ripped people's heads off before as a staffer, right? There's some
Yeah.
folks where I've ripped folks' heads off and took them to the
Mhm.
woodshed, but there are some folks where I will not coach them because out of personal values or principles. Like if I'm taking them
Yeah.
on as a student is like I generally think they're within my boundaries that I can work with.
Mm.
So there have been some where I've said no, and I also do outside of Leland, I do coaching where I will do packages, right, instead of
Mm.
hours. When I say packages, I think of it as like almost like a retainer, right?
Yeah.
And those are usually in the sense where it's you can reach out to me as many times, but I also reserve the right to fire you, which you usually hear of it as not the case with coaches in students. It's usually people think of the coach as the client, or sorry, the coach, as selling a service, and usually the student fires the
Yeah.
coach, right?
Right.
For me, it's more like I'm especially picky because if I have to deal with a student that doesn't put in the work, that doesn't put in the time, it's like nobody's happy. And usually, if we're especially at the undergrad level, I usually get the
Yeah.
parents involved, especially if they're paying a lot of money. And that way, it's just an easier sell, or I don't know if sell's right. It's just an easier agreement among everyone. Like the parents know you're serious. The parents also know that the coach expects the kid to be held to a certain standard. And I make it very clear where, look, I'm not here to babysit you and I'm not here to spoon feed you anything. If you can't follow basic instructions, then I'm not coaching you. But then there's also like students where I've had cases where, yeah, the student just didn't have the money. And so I'm like, and this is where I guess you can say I take a risk where I will say, look, you're a great kid and I know you don't have the money and I'm okay with that. Is like, why don't you pay me after you get the offer? And once you get that summer internship, right, you could pay me then. Right. I don't do that often because it's pretty risky and it's pretty time consuming. But once
Hmm.
in a blue moon, there's a kid you're just like, look, he just needs a break and like a real break, right? It's like usually the kid who's going to state school and working 4 different jobs. Right? Like I'm
Yeah.
not gonna ask him like 1 hour of coaching is like his what? Like more than like his whole day's salary, right?
Yeah.
You probably make more an hour coaching him than he makes the whole day on minimum wage. Or so so those cases where I will make an exception, or those cases I'd be like, look, you could pay me half first and then the half later. Right.
Yeah.
So
So
it
let's
varies.
talk a little about. I want to on
Mhm.
the original question I asked you
Sorry.
that
Yeah.
started this was, where do people find a coach, right? And you mentioned some of the ways that maybe sort of family, friends, or referrals. I think
Yeah.
that's probably one of the best ways for most people if
Mhm.
you have a specific, group that that have gone in.
Yeah.
But the other way, the cold way, right? There's different, I would say, two major types of coaching
Yeah.
platforms. One is like the pure coaching market. So the primary one is probably Leland. I think
Yeah.
there's others. I got an offer, I think, is one. There's
Mhm.
like several others where basically coaches can go on there. The platform does some kind of vetting process, but like not a ton. And they basically put you on that. You
Yeah.
get up on there, you put your price, you sell as a coach, and you can go and like find coaches via that process.
Yeah.
The other way is like more like a firm or a boutique, if you will, in
Yeah.
some fashion, where it's one strategy group is like the
That's
big
the big
example
one.
of this, but there's also like Wall Street Mastermind and some others that
Yeah.
they basically are a team of coaches. I think the way it works is like you come in and talk to sort of the like head coach, and then he kind of like has a mentor that he works with,
Yeah.
that kind of works on your case, right? So
Yeah.
those are and those are usually a little more expensive. Sometimes those involve like proprietary
They're very
materials.
expensive.
Right. They may have like a little bit more system around what they're doing, whereas
Mhm.
Leland is usually more of like kind of a personal, like custom tailored
Yeah.
experience. But what do you think, like, how would you advise candidates in terms of like that decision of whether to go to Leland, a Leland type of platform where it's like individual coaches versus going to like a group, um, and kind of paying a lot to kind of get into their system?
So I will say is I hate to say this, it's like I'd say you really have to do your due diligence. And the best ones are actually referrals or recommendations from people you know. But it's obviously hard, right? Because I think one thing I really don't like about the coaching industry, and this is just across coaching in general, for example, MBA coaching or undergrad coaching or like investment banking or whatever career coaching is, a lot of it plays on fear as well as marketing,
Mm,
especially the very expensive ones, right?
yeah.
And they will charge an arm and a leg. Like certain of the boutique ones, and there's also like the data gets cherry picked. Right? It's like they charge 50,000 right USD for a package,
Right.
right? And they only cherry pick the best results, right? And so it's almost and of course it's like, you know, you see yourself as one shot for your kid, right?
Well, what do you mean by cherry pick the best results? Like, explain what you mean
So
by
they
that.
like some of the coaches will like, they'll show all the folks who got in, right? And they'll claim a certain rate, right?
Mhm.
But if you really kick the tires and like, because I happen to know a lot of undergraduate students, and you'll also see a lot of cases where the parents spend that much money and the kid, you know, didn't turn out that great, right? Except that's not listed, and those stories are not told. And I think where it sometimes frustrates me, I think if you a good coach or an honest coach should frankly tell you if a kid's not cut up to be IB or
Ah,
whatever, right?
yeah.
And like I will tell that when if I meet a great student, I would say like, look, you actually don't need that many coaching hours. You probably use one or two, or maybe you just need some advice, right? And I'm happy to
Mhm.
sort of just chat with you 10, 15 minutes without charging you, right? Because
Yeah.
I'm in the business not for the money keeps the lights on, but at the end of the day, it's like I enjoy coaching and mentoring people. Whereas I think you'll meet a lot of people, coaches, is they see you more as a sort of like a bottom line number, which can be pretty frustrating.
Top
Um,
line, right?
Sorry, top line number, yeah. And then they just like go like, okay, well, you got money. All right, we're gonna stick this package with you, and you could take it or leave it, right?
Mhm.
And so, do your due diligence, talk to folks, talk to a bunch of coaches, and a good coach is one that will give you honest advice, right? What you want is
Mhm.
honesty. You don't want someone to pump you up. You don't want somebody. I mean, that's just my personal thoughts, but I'm digressing way too
Yeah.
much.
No, I think that's like I think the first thing is that people should get on calls with these folks
Yeah.
because a lot of them will give you the time. They'll give you 15 to 20 minutes to chat with them. And I think that you can kind of get a sense based on conversations with people, like where you belong. I think that's one of the big kind of key interesting things about the investment banking recruitment process is that you can go do the same thing at a bank, right? You can go talk to them for 15, 20 minutes and kind of get a vibe check of like, oh, these guys are straight up evil versus these people are pretty nice or they seem pretty like interested or
Yeah.
engaged. I would recommend that you do the same with coaching because different things fit for different people.
Yeah.
I will say though that there is probably a lot of statistical bias in any sort of numbers that you see.
Yes.
I also worked with a candidate, and one of the questions he asked me was like, "Has any of your clients failed?" And I said, "Yes, they have." Um, especially the ones. I mean, really only one, but I've had people go to super days and not get them, and
Yeah.
that happens. And it's not always, for one, it's not always in my control. For two, it's not always in their control. But the thing is that those types of statistics of like how many people have gotten offers by using this isn't really a very valid one
Yeah.
because someone who's willing to spend $50,000 on coaching in the first place is someone who's already like highly dedicated to
Yes.
going after an offer to begin with. So
Yeah.
they're already someone that's going to basically do whatever it takes, which is what it takes. So they are already willing to be spending this huge amount and studying a ton and doing all these hard things. So it makes sense that that type of person is going to get an offer. It's not necessarily that the coaching caused that to happen. Um,
Correlation, not causation.
Right. So I think that that would be my one caution to people shopping around is to pay a little bit less attention perhaps to the actual like coaching outcomes and kind of get a vibe check and like have them kind of do like a basic intro session and just see how it feels. Because I work with candidates. I worked with a really great candidate this week who's an incoming MBA.
Mhm.
She's doing a joint degree in a biomedical field. She's a research scientist, and we basically helped to put together her story. And she was like kind of blown away. Like she was being like, I was like really flattered because she was being extremely like, wow, it really helped me like put all these things together. I never really thought about how those events in my life actually led to me wanting to pursue banking in the first place. And she was really happy about how I did that. And This was sort of the first call that we had together. It was about an hour and a half. And she asked, should I schedule more calls with you over the summer? And I was like, no, I don't think you really need it because, you have this together. They're not really going to want you doing like many coffee chats until
Yeah.
like you get into school. And I would recommend like read this, read this, read this, right? Um, I think that like for most people, if you, especially, the hour and a half session, it seems like it's a lot of money and it
Yeah.
can be, but point being that like if you do that hour and a half session or you do 1 hour session with someone, you're going to pretty quickly be able to tell like, did this person add value? Did they make me feel more confident in what I'm going into? Do I feel like I have less questions than I did before? Or if I have more questions, are they better questions? Are they,
Yeah.
more. Um, so I think all of those things should paint the picture to you that um, I guess the two things is like be weary of stats and then like vibe
Yeah.
check people in this coaching space because it is a sales thing. I mean, we are
Yeah.
doing sales. Like I mean, it's not like we uh our part of our job is to sell. And so um I would just say like you need to try to avoid people who are going to sell at any cost and try to go to the people who are going to like really sell in sort of a win-win type of fashion.
Yeah, and then take a step deeper and ask them how they would strategize you, right? In terms of what's their
Mhm.
methodology, etc. Um,
Yeah.
I think, and also like go for details in general. I think if anything is vague, um, or something sounds too good to be true, usually it is, right?
Mhm.
Um, but I will say back to the cost part is if you actually find a really good coach, especially if you're an MBA, um, it's worth investing. I think this is the one thing is same with business school. I haven't been a big fan of what's been going on for with tuition. I think there's a news article that just came out. It's like annual tuition for undergrad is going to hit like over 100K per year. I think this was like Georgetown. And my thought is like, look, if you're spending 100K per year, I sometimes feel that like colleges need to have like benchmarks to hold them accountable in terms of getting jobs. Right? If you're spending that much money and you can't get a job, well, I think there's also a big issue with the school. But in the grand scheme of things, also like, for example, MBAs or undergrads, you're spending what, $500,000 at least for your undergrad if you're going to a top tier school, or you're maybe spending 400 grand at for an MBA is investing in the money for a coach, if especially if you're an MBA. You go to an MBA to get that career change. It's your last shot of getting into banking. Kick your tires on the coach, shop around, talk to different coaches, and seriously think about investing. I've seen too many cases where kids, went through MBA first semester recruiting, thought they'll be okay, didn't get anything, right? Got rejected. And then they come looking to me in like end of January. And I'm like, at that point, I can't help you with anything. Right.
Yeah.
So
It's
like,
Hamilton, right?
yeah, it's
You know the lyric I'm talking about.
I'm gonna have to check. I think I know
I'm
what you're
not gonna
talking about.
waste my shot.
Uh
What did
yes,
you think I meant?
we'll talk more about Hamilton. Um
Okay.
but yeah, it's like
I think maybe it's time we pivot this into a musical
oh,
podcast, Ryan.
we went from coffee chats to musicals now. We're gonna sing this.
Yeah. I think the rest people have to pay for the rest. How about that? No, we'll give the remaining 15 minutes of this podcast. We'll keep it about investment banking recruitment. I want to cover a few more things.
Yeah.
So one of them that I want to talk one other thing I want to talk about is um let's say the sort of like pricing tiers
Yeah.
almost. Like cuz I feel like there's sort of like tier levels. And then
Yes, there
another
are.
thing I want to talk about is uh I don't know, red flags maybe
Yes. Yes.
what to look out for and also green flags like as people are going and assessing coaches. So okay, so pricing wise for investment banking coaches, I think that you'll find a lot of the sort of younger new coaches, especially people that are either brand new to coaching or maybe they're kind of like this is like a side thing and they're like in
Yeah.
school or like they're an undergrad. You'll typically find those like around 100 or less.
Yeah.
A lot of times those people aren't going to be particularly structured per se about
Yeah.
how they're doing things. They're probably going to be someone that got an offer already. And so
Yeah.
they're kind of like hustling to do that. Another tier would be like the tier like slightly above that would be like, let's say an MBA who is like going to be doing something else, but they came from investment banking. They were
Yeah.
an investment banking analyst. That tier is usually probably, I would say, what would you say, 100 to like 150 or somewhere around
Somewhere
there.
around that.
Some of them might charge more, but that's kind of where like the market fits those people.
Mhm.
And then I think like as you start to get above that, it seems to kind of to me like jump up to like almost like a 200 to 250 range. And that's
Yeah.
where you start to get into like people that are pretty like dug into coaching who have done it for a while,
Mhm.
who are like basically professional coaches.
Yes.
Um, and then, you know, things kick up beyond that. In terms of like, you know, you might have like, I think, I guess in my opinion, as things go beyond that, it's kind of hard to justify a price that's like far, far beyond that because there's only so much that you can cover within an hour of talking to someone that
Yeah.
like it's, you know, at some point you've kind of saturated the airwaves with like the most elite investment banking recruitment advice possible. Um, but there are people that charge above that, and it kind of depends. I think in a in probably in the next year or so that those numbers will go up for at least for Ryan, probably for me too.
I don't know about that.
Mostly on the basis that like more and more people, as we sort of release this stuff, more and more people have wanted to talk to us, and so like it kind of gets like we have to raise the price to justify to make time for that. Um, so yeah, any you have any like insights into that, like the pricing thing? Any other like kind of things that you've seen happen?
I'm with you for the most part, right? In terms of right, the junior ones, the some who those who got the internships, right? You'll see them at the lower end, and you have to be a bit wary about that because at the end of the day, you also want a coach that is responsible, right? You don't want someone to just say as a transaction, right? You get in, great. You don't, not my problem, right? I mean, sure,
Right.
there's personal accountability. Where I think this is the thing is like those who sort of freelance or side gigs, right? They may not necessarily, right? They may not necessarily have the responsibility, right? They kind of see it as on the clock. But I think one thing you also sort of want to look at is just because someone got a good offer doesn't necessarily mean they're a good coach, right?
Yes.
So, and I've seen this with my peers too, right? There are things that where I'm like, I look at my network and the people, I'm just like, you're really smart and you're very good at what you do, but you're terrible at teaching me anything.
Yep.
And so definitely talk to the people, right? And hit on the details. Like, let's say you meet
Hmm.
somebody who's like freaking works at Blackstone, right? Okay, they must kudos to them for getting to Blackstone. And maybe they're like Goldman or whatever before. And they just, knock it out of the park. But like that may not be the best coach for you.
Right.
So, right, it's like so also look beyond the qualifications, talk to different folks as well. Um,
Yeah.
do your due diligence. It's like just rehashing on Mike's point is have those intro calls. And if a coach isn't willing to have an intro call and forcing you to like pay right away for a long package, I think that's a big red flag.
Yeah. There are some coaches that require you to pay for like the intro call, but it's heavily discounted,
Hmm.
which I actually don't mind. I think that's actually a little bit, that's a little smart because I do think
Yeah.
a lot of people, at least even for me, like they call and it's like kind of a waste of time because they're
Yeah.
clearly I mean, for one, they're not valuing the time. They're not
Yeah.
really put together. They don't really seem to have thought about what they want to ask or what they want to talk about. Um, and for two, it's just, I think it kind of pushes out the people that like aren't really that invested in it.
Yeah.
Right. And that can be something small, right? It could be, okay, 30 minutes for $50. It's like,
Yeah.
that's enough that you're not going to waste that money or time, but
Mhm.
it's not so much that it's prohibitive. Um, so well, yeah, what do you think are some of the red flags that people should look out for when they're picking an investment banking career coach?
Anyone who guarantees you an offer of getting a job, especially in this market, I mean, I don't guarantee anyone anything, right? I think that's always a red flag if someone says, like, I'm going to get you into Harvard or whatever, or I'm going to get you into Goldman. Based off my experience in this cycle, is like, I'm pretty confident that, I have a good sense that you should land an offer, but I will not guarantee anything. And like, especially this cycle, I feel like recruiting has gotten much, much harder. Is like, I gave a lot of referrals out to people I know in the bank's last recruiting cycle. I mean, the kids ultimately landed, but I was just simply shocked by the lower yield compared to like when I was recruiting. If you had a coffee chat with maybe like three people, one, two, even just one or two, you could pretty much get an interview back then, right?
Mm,
Nowadays, I've seen a case where like a kid had like, and I think this is also especially if you're recruiting for New York is much harder, right? It's like
mhm,
you could network and have a bunch of coffee chats that'll get you a higher view, but then a higher
mm,
view itself afterwards is a gigantic crapshoot. So
mm.
anyone who just goes off and guarantees says, I'm going to guarantee your job,
Yeah.
I'd be like, and then you also see within is there's so much nepotism this cycle in last cycle where so many people are calling in for favors just because the market's that bad. And so I think with the official statistics is like getting into JP or Goldman is less than 1%. I sometimes really wonder what is the true percentage of getting in if you don't have like a contact, right? So
Yeah.
just the numbers don't fully add up.
Yeah, I think, going back to the numbers stuff, I think
Mhm.
even the numbers that banks report and people think about the way that people think about these types of things, I think is
Mhm.
also very off. I don't think that it is harder to get into JPM, for example, than it is to get into Harvard, because
Mhm.
I think that a lot of the people, it's easier to apply to
Yeah.
JPM than it is to apply for Harvard.
Mhm.
And I think there's a lot of people that just shoot a resume over or
Yeah.
just shoot a cover letter over without really thinking about where it's landing or that it matters because they're applying to JPM and John Deere and General Electric and every other company that's on the list at their school. I think when people start to look at stats, they start to look at, oh, this percentage of businesses fail, this percentage, but you're not that person, right? You're a person that's actually going to try. You're a person that's actually going to put a lot of thought into your resume, that's going to try
Mhm.
to get coffee chats, that's going to try to know your technicals or hire a coach and get on Offer Goblin and watch this podcast and all these things. If you're that person and you're digging deep, just know that your chances are a lot better than you think they are, and you should shoot that shot with a lot of confidence. So that's my message to you all.
Mhm.
If you're getting discouraged looking at stats, is that the pool of people that even qualify to be in that room is very small. You think about an MBA student who's going to tech in San Francisco. How many MBA top MBA school folks are going into tech in the West Coast?
Yeah.
Maybe 100, maybe less than that. And how many of them have actually put in a lot of thought into it? How many of them have stayed up late planning and plotting and scheming and I mean, maybe less nefarious sounding words than that. But the point being that you have a real shot. There's really not that many people that can be in that room, and you
Yeah.
should fight for that shot. You should fight for that win and believe in yourself to do it. That said, a coach is someone that can help you. Like, we are both coaches because we fire people up. We know
Mhm.
what people are good at. We know what people are bad at. We know what the sport is. A lot of people
Yeah.
that are going into this don't even really know what the game is. And if you don't know what the game is, you can hire us, or you can get on a call with us, or you can watch this podcast and we'll explain it to you. So, all of those things are why you should hire a coach. Obviously, we're very biased, and I didn't have a coach when I got my offer. I don't think Ryan did either. It's not
No.
impossible to do it otherwise, but it's something that I think can push you a lot further than you think that you can go. So we're here for you. There's going to be links in the bio of pretty much everything that we post, and you can always kind of reach out for a call there.
Yeah, excellent points, Mike. Um, yeah, just coaching, I feel bad for just how competitive things are. It's like, well, I also started banking 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago. And like back then, the idea of a coach was like, you just never thought of it. You just didn't really think that was a thing. Right. So I
I will
sometimes,
say another
yeah.
thing though, and we've talked about this like philosophically, is that a lot of this process, whether you go it alone or you go with a coach, are life lessons and
Yeah.
career and professional lessons that you will always have with you. So the people that I've worked with, I think one of the most high value things that I do as a coach is
Mhm.
helping people with their story.
Yeah.
And that story they can take and use for other things. But
Yes.
not just that, but that story for them, they remember that, oh, yeah, I remember actually how that happened and what I was thinking there. And it kind of solidified it. Like, I remember when I was doing my MBA essays,
Yeah.
it really gave me a chance to look back on, like, what have I done so far? Where am I going? And I wrote these essays that
Mhm.
I really loved. Like, I really enjoyed writing them. I really enjoyed thinking about them. And they solidified my identity. They solidified my journey and where I'm going. And I think that hiring a coach, it helps with that, with the story piece of that. It helps with the professional piece of that. This is how you're coming across. Most people are not going to tell you that. Like, hey, you need to cut your hair. Hey, the way that you say this, it doesn't sound good. It doesn't sound like the way that you think that it
Mhm.
sounds. Hey, people are going to have this bias against you. You need to do this differently.
Yeah.
And so on, right? There's so many of these skills that I think you can take from coaching and from just this process in general, and go further with it. Ryan and I aren't doing this because we love people getting offers in finance. It's because we love seeing people grow. We
Yeah.
love seeing people defy their own expectations. We like to see people win. And that has really little to do with the fact that, it's in this particular arena. If it
Mhm.
weren't for this arena, we would have picked another one. We're just people that want to see other people win.
Yeah.
And that's what you're getting. And that's what you need to look for in a coach. You need to look for someone in a coach that wants, that just, gets you fired up, that believes in you. Um, and so, yeah, I think that's what I believe in. I think that's what you should look for. I think people receive that in different ways and people
Yeah.
find that in different ways, but that's what a coach is. And I think, in my opinion, it's worth it, obviously. Um, so,
I think long term, right? I think long term solutions and investments, right? It's not just getting the offer, right? It's growing. It's a process, right? You'll be a very different person coming out of this than when you went in before.
yeah. And you can click on our link in the bio and talk to either one of us. And if we're not available, we'll find someone for you to talk to. There's a lot of great people out there, and we're happy to help. So thank you for watching. If you've come all the way to the end of this, we have been working very hard to get this podcast going and to build up our socials and to do all these things. Our whole team, me, Ryan, Jackson, our producer, our growth operator, Cheng, our lead developer, product guy. On behalf of all of us, thank you for watching, and we will see you next week.
See you on the next one. Take care, all.